I'm the CEO of oDesk. I've been at oDesk since about 5.5 years. September of '05, I joined Odysseus and the co-founder and a handful of people who were on the mission to enable the world to work remotely successfully. So we're an on-demand global employment platform. We help companies to hire, to manage, and to pay remote talent from all over the world. So the problem we're solving is that we think that in this economy, unemployment's at an all-time high, yet companies are trying to do more with less. And as everybody knows, there's a hiring shortage of great technical talent here in the Valley. Well, we help fix that problem by bringing the global workforce to the local market. We enable you to hire that talent, work with that talent remotely, and then pay that talent legally globally. So think of us as the whole employment platform to fix the problem that the talent doesn't typically live where the jobs are located. A little bit about me, and I'll let Odysseus introduce himself. Prior to oDesk, I had a character building experience at a little startup called IntelliBank, and we were trying to be not only dessert topping but also floor wax. And one of the lessons I just gave you is focus is really important, and we didn't focus, and as a result, we didn't have a successful exit. But I think experience is what you get when you don't get all the other things you want, and that experience enabled me to have some good lessons learned to bring to oDesk, which we hope to share not only the successes of oDesk, but some of the lessons learned from my previous company. Prior to that, I was at IBM via the acquisition of Rational Software, via the acquisition of Pure Software, which was a developer diagnostic product in the software development tool space. And Odysseus is the founder of oDesk. I'll let him talk about his background.
I started oDesk about 8 years ago. I used to be young then, with my co-founder. Actually, Gary joined just a couple of years after, so he's also a non-timer in the company. He's practically a co-founder. Before oDesk, I was for 6 years in startups. I did 2 more startups. The first one just died. The second one barely survived the exit of the founder and turned around and is doing well. Before the startups, which is then about 14 years of startup experience here in the Valley, I was in research for 1.5 years in IBM Almaden. And before that I did my PhD in Wisconsin, and before that Greece. And for Greeks, the few technical Greeks here in the Valley, PhD is the typical way. So most of the technical people that we'll see are actually often PhD or PhD dropouts that are coming and end up in the Valley. So that was a typical case for me as well.
Does anybody need translation for what he said?
Oops. Mr. Angelica over there, Mr. Translation.
He said he's from Greece. Odysseus said he's from Greece. So I'm sure that many of you have been to these events before, and you know, we're here to talk about sort of the lessons learned or the best practices and really scaling your business and getting to millions of users and millions of dollars of revenue per month. And if you came for the magic bullets and the answers, you might want to save your time and leave now. It's you know, there's a lot of hard work involved, and I'm sure you've all heard the answers about getting close to your customers and validating the market and product market fit, and things take twice as long than you plan, so make sure you have enough runway and budget, and don't let great get in the way of good. And I'm very happy to talk about all of those things. We think these are the things that you typically hear when you come to these sessions about starting a company. We're going to leave plenty of time for QA that anybody wants to dive in, what I would call the magic 10 bullets. Happy to email them to anybody that wants to see that standard deck. But what we thought was we might just go off the reservation a little bit and talk about some of the other things that we think have made us successful, things that I don't think you typically hear at this. And so we're going to go ahead and focus on those. And the first one we want to talk about is the fact that Odysseus had the vision years ago, before it was cool, before the mega trends that are in existence today, the economy, the internet, and globalization were happening, to pick a space that he was, one, really passionate about. And he was passionate about remote work. And the reason why is because he wanted to work with his co-founder, who still lives in Athens and is still with the company. He comes to work every day from Athens. And so
long commute, yes.
Yeah, long commute. Not so long used via the internet, which was one of the trends that emerged and enabled this to happen. But the thing that that I think Odysseus should talk about is, how did he have this vision, and how did he have the courage of his conviction to go after something that wasn't cool? It wasn't did he say, did you ask yourself, hey, I want to be the best in the world at staffing? Or, hey, did you say, this is what, like, why not, like in today's terms, social, local, mobile? Everybody thinks if it's not slow, low, then forget it. It's not, I shouldn't be doing it. And so what I'd like to hear you talk about is, it wasn't cool, it wasn't trendy, it wasn't hip, but today it's a massive market opportunity. How did you know? What did you do?
So it is a combination of things. In some sense, probably this, you will feel related if you are a technical entrepreneur. You have to be a bit antisocial. You have to be avoiding events like this. You have to be not reading too much TechCrunch. You have to somehow keep the external influences to a minimum. And that's the opposite of what you would expect that this valley is all about. It's about the buzz. And I was like that. I am not the person that actually goes into conferences a little bit, the ethnic conference maybe. And that actually keeps me to actually be focusing on the things that are the natural gravitation of every entrepreneur, which is my personal pains. Every person, the entrepreneur typically has pains, things that really bother them. And those actually are internal. They don't come from the outside. And for me, it was really the fact that I wanted to be able to have a normal working relationship with my friend and for years, Stratis, and I couldn't. And there was a second part after that, which was the fact that I had to leave my nice, exotic country to go where the work is, to go where the cool companies are. And that was, for me, it was sacrifice. And the typical kind of violin of every first generation immigrant here leaves behind families, etc. We have lived that. And why? We shouldn't have to. So these pains were the primary target that I followed, and it ended up being a non-cool market. It ended up being the cemetery of $70 to $90 million of VC money that had put money into Elance and Guru and almost were fully written off. Now, in that sense, I didn't go for the non-cool. I kept a bit of my ears closed, and I followed the personal pains, and that's how I end up.
But we've seen a lot of people follow those personal pains right off the cliff, right? Like my last company, seriously, I mean, there's a lot of, you have this belief that everybody should want this or need this because you have it, and it goes to sort of the validating the market. And it wasn't easy to get started in a marketplace business. In our marketplace, we have employers that are looking to get work done, like Mikhail, who is a customer of oDesk or was a customer of oDesk, and we have people who are looking for work, the contractors that need work or that live all over the world. We have 1.3 million of those contractors in our network today. We have 250,000 people like Mikhail who are customers. But it didn't start that way. It's like very chicken and egg. You got to get chickens or you have to get eggs. And as you're doing that, and as it takes so long and it's so grueling to get that
flywheel. There is a magic bullet for that. We will be keeping this adversarial dialogue for your entertainment. So there is no magic bullet for that. I think the only trick that I have is, if you believe, if you start, you cannot tell if this is really the right non-cool trend. You can only tell that this is a very cool trend. That is easy to test. I am definitely in a hot business if you have started and there are a dozen companies just like you doing the same thing. So you know that this is not definitely one of those cases where the space that nobody else knows. Now, someone said this interesting thing that the whole space of opportunity, of money opportunity, if you were to put on top of it all the brains that are looking for these opportunities, it's not at all uniformly spread. You have high density areas and you have whole deserts where really there's just one tiny entrepreneur looking for a whole space where there's lots of dollars. And you see that when you look at the exit of the companies, when you look at IPOs, and you see this company that making $1 billion valuation in a space that you didn't even know that exists. Mm-hmm. And then, so when somehow it seems that brains are not really being attracted to money. They're being attracted to cool, exciting things. So oDesk, payroll, staffing isn't exciting. So for how many years we stayed there without any true new competition? We kept on telling everybody this is great. Not a single other company came in the space of
payroll, and staffing. And literally a couple of years ago, some smart fellow said crowdsourcing. Suddenly, people's imaginations start kind of growing and coming up with ideas. This is cool. And then suddenly, dozens of brains went all together into a little corner of the e-workspace, the crowdsourcing corner. And we're looking there, again, just out of a single smart marketing idea, how people were gravitated, and then you have a high density of brain in a little corner where there is about 2 loaves of bread to split in the crowdsourcing space. So,
So maybe one last question, we'll get on to another sort of tip, but what, when do you know that, when do you sort of pull the plug, right? Or how do you know that maybe there isn't, the market isn't validated? So a good friend of mine started a little DVD company. They basically, you can rent DVDs via the internet. It's called Netflix. And he you know, they couldn't raise money in the early days. They're out banging on doors and VCs were laughing. They're like, hey, we'll mail you a term sheet in a red envelope, you know, because people didn't get it. The market wasn't there yet. And he said that if it wasn't this unwavering courage of conviction that there was a massive market there, they wouldn't have made it. And I'm sure Mark Benioff with his little company called Salesforce.com, you know, what people don't realize is the first 5 years they were in business, average number of seats, 5 seats per customer, and it cost them $100 million to get those early small to medium business customers in sales and marketing. So at what point do you know, what is it? Is it the passion of the entrepreneur? Like, how do you decide, you know, there's a market here or there isn't, or, you know, what?
I have a trick for that. The trick is that if you have got money, other people's money, it is a dark black hole. You can actually go for there because it's not your money, and you can keep on going and living to this zombie of a company.
I don't know what you mean. Could you restate that?
If you get VC money, you have no way to know where to stop. If you somehow start a company and pay money out of your own pocket, you will stop pretty fast because, yes, for the obvious reasons, but then when your money is your own, the bar is so much higher for your conviction that actually makes you stop. So my previous company, Intact, for example, it got money, lots of money early on, and it almost went for 4 or 5 years into this zombie, exist, doesn't exist, exist, doesn't exist. Now, 2011, 11 years later, now it managed to somehow pass out of that, but this company actually shouldn't have survived. But it survived because somehow it had too much money to live out with. Elance is a similar case, and I hope nobody here is from Elance, but this company started in 1999, got money, and kept on going and going and going without really any, just because it had money. So if you start without money, and by picking a non-cool space, you have the other kind of special thing. VCs don't like non-cool spaces. VCs are laggards. They're not following the leaders. So I
hope there's no VCs in the room either, I would say.
No, I mean, they are following the global trends. So in that sense, when you will find your nice little non-cool space that only you know, the VCs won't recognize it. So you won't have really a funding problem. You will have to start on your own because you will end up getting little money. You will have to give lots of value for that if you have to actually get the money in the first year, like how I end up doing. I end up having to give lots of equity, get little money, and but as a result, so this kind of will follow in a different thing. We end up maintaining control. The VCs came with very low expectations because this was another non-obvious space for them. They put little money, they got lots of space, little expectations, and so the company kept on exceeding their expectations. So Gary ended up being the master of his domain. They never had questioned his decisions. It is an easy company to run.
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity, Odysseus. One of the other things that we've practiced from the beginning is transparency. And this was a tough one for me. So coming in as a CEO, I was my background is in sales. I'm more of an operator. I connect with, I've never had a good idea in my life, trust me. Odysseus is the idea guy. He's the visionary, happens to also be a fantastic operator. He just doesn't know it, which makes my job even easier. But coming in, the team was pushing me to be more transparent. And it wasn't so much transparency with the employees, it was transparency with the customers. We should, one of our guys used to say, the truth will set you free. We should tell people what our revenue is. We should expose how much people make per hour. We should put charts out that show our growth. We should be transparent because, one, we can leverage this for SEO, and two, people will appreciate how transparent and open we are. And it took a couple of months for me to get it. So talk about what you think was the importance of transparency and how what you think advising.
Whether this is actually something that is obvious to you. Within really a year or two after we start kind of opening up, our whole industry's changed. From a closed place where really more or less you go to the marketplace, now e-learns, every single competitor in our space is actually having open exposure of how much they're doing, how much business they're doing. They're having communities where people are bad-mouthing them. This was not the way it was before. One single company turned the way business was being done, became transparent in its practices, in its numbers, and the whole industry was forced to follow. Now, you mentioned before how we got there and the transparency of employees. Now this goes back to our special kind of we are a funny company. We're a different company, obviously, because we're oDesk. You may expect we are very, very virtual. If you're a virtual company, it's extremely hard to be non-transparent within your company. What do I mean with that? Imagine any company has documents, has a spreadsheet, has data, has customer information. You typically build walls that protect the knowledge from going to all the people that they don't need it. We didn't do that. We made the conscious decision that it is not a need-to-know basis, but everybody should have information that they would never care about. So everybody, and now this is if there is any fraudster here, everybody in the company has access, knows how much is our balance in the bank, how much we did our financials, how many hours the finance people know, the sign-ups, the engineer people know, how many customers signed up today in this hour. And now what this allowed? This allowed people to understand our business in a cross way without really having to go through the informal, oh, I know this guy and that's how I find out. We didn't have that. The people were actually able to actually find things by themselves. Now, imagine that you are virtual, you are at the opposite sides of the globe. Imagine being stuck on a question that somehow your manager haven't thought to give you access to. This can be blocking for everything. So, within the employees in a virtual company, transparency and availability of all information is extremely empowering. It also creates the mentality that information and everything has to be free. The company isn't relying on obfuscation and hiding for its successes.
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm shouting though, right?
Thank you.
For its successes.
Why do you think it's important? Why is it important? Okay, it's not transparent, so what?
So, enables innovation from within. It risks leaks, but it forces the company that its successes, it relies in execution and not hiding of some secret IP. It is the point that I made. It is necessary if people are virtually working remotely, relying on written passive information. So now
I think there's a couple other things. One is it forces accountability. So
right.
Everybody in the company knows if how the bank balance is doing, and so if it dips, they say, "Geez, are we not doing well?" It really forces accountability across the board. So much so that we create a dashboard for our investors, and they can go in and see not only they can see everything about the business, the leading indicators, the numbers today. And the interesting thing about it is they never ask you, because they have access to it, and after a while they stop looking, right? And so the great part about it is that, like, when we have a board meeting, we don't have to spend time creating charts and graphs and everything. It's there. It's like you want the numbers, they're right there. Let's spend the board meeting focused on tough strategic questions. So this transparency and this visibility, I think it creates an unbelievable amount of trust, and it really, I think it spurs innovation. People can look at it and say, hey, I noticed this metric was doing this. Could we try this and influence it in a different direction? So I think there's something really valuable about that. And the fact that we live it, this is the way we live, this is our business, right? It's the transparency of what was this this contractor's reputation and his feedback and his test scores and previous work history. And if you work at eBay, you understand the importance of that for making a good decision. And so we practice what we preach internally as well.
Right. The case about the investors, this is, I mean, for those of you that have been in companies with VCs, it is a very careful balance. I mean, to what extent are you going to really expose the business and all the dirt and all the dirty laundry, to your investors? So it was an actual non-obvious decision to make that information allow our VCs to have continuous access to that information. And I think most of them have stopped looking. A couple are there actually many times a day checking out how the hours did today, how the sign-ups did today. Now,
because we put a little tickler in there where we can see how often they're looking. Yes. Along the lines of transparency.
Now they come into the board meeting, and you see they have a smile up there, having been following all along a great month, and you have converted this recurring monthly tourist that comes there kind of with some attitude into a team member, into a guy that actually is sharing all the excitement with you all along, and is kind of worried. What happened? I said, oh, it was this funny Russian holiday that completely took out the hours. Don't worry. And you have to explain those things. It may kind of sound like bringing the VCs down to the micromanagement, but in my view, it changed them into true team members from just plain investors.
So, you know, one of the things we talk about validating the market and product market fit and the risk of an innovator believing because they need something that the rest of the world is going to need it. We talked about how far do you go before you double down or cut your losses and pivot to the next thing. And, you know, one of the things that we see in our network, a lot of buyers of services, people who need work done, will come to oDesk and say, I'd love to get this project done, but I'm really concerned about my IP. What kind of IP protection do you have, and what should I do about my IP? I don't want anybody stealing my idea. I don't want anybody, taking what my thing and outdoing me on it, etc. And one of the things that's made us successful is actually being really transparent about that as well, about sharing our roadmap with our users, telling them what we're thinking about doing, going to the community and saying, hey, we're thinking about this, what do you think? Or actually trying something and letting the community validate it for us. And it's been really successful because a lot of times the community may think they know, but they don't know. They ask for something, we do it, and then it's crickets, nobody uses it. So what do you think about that, Odysseus? Because I know we as a company have wrestled with how much do you share and are you going to tip off competitors, and what do you think about protecting IP?
I think this is one of the areas where in our company, and I believe that in every one of our future companies, we will be following a different and non-obvious direction. Really, when we started oDesk, one of the most common VC feedback or customer feedback was you will give your code to a Russian. I mean, imagine.
Odysseus, this is a predominantly Russian crowd. You realize?
I mean, imagine these fellows in Sun Hill, where for a Russian is a hacker by definition. So you will give all your code to a hacker, and we had to explain. I had to explain. They didn't believe me, but we ended up following that practice. That actually, if you were to give all your code to a random, not even a screened person in Russia that lives in the midst of Chelyabinsk, Siberia, the chances that will end up anything happen to them is much smaller than you giving to a well-established, polished Silicon Valley engineer that within 2 years will leave your company and go to the competitor. And so now, from my perspective, I actually don't care if it goes to the competitor. And that's kind of, I'm going probably a bit way out there, but that's what I think. In my view, the code, any company that really thinks, at least in the space that we are with software, not the real hard software problems, but most of the companies that are doing don't have real hard, amazing algorithms as IP. So the overprotection of the IP and code is, in my view, completely miswarranted. And somehow that ends up seeing the company that really our code base, everybody can download the complete code base. And we encourage people to actually take piece of it and open source it. Now, it doesn't happen very often because it takes work. But and that's about the code. The other aspect of the IP, which is your business roadmap, your ideas. Now, we go out in the community and we know, because we are seeing Our competitors are all there, and we're discussing openly our roadmap and what to do. And now, what does this? Now, this Mr. Davis advocate say, why is this good? Why would you ever discuss openly your roadmap? For one thing, it actually makes us be very strong about our execution. Exactly because we don't rely in just hiding secretively our path, but we are iterating with our customers. We are hearing what everybody has to say, and we are relying exclusively on us being the first. And now, what has happened? We have seen the following thing, that the competition, exactly because we are so open, they are in a continuous mode of actually following us. Now, and we are telling to ourselves...
Yeah, but isn't that bad?
Actually, if your execution is second grade, it is bad. If your execution is decent, you just changed someone from looking for self-innovation, from looking for leapfrogging, into someone that just does what you do. So we don't need to look at those guys. The guys that I really care is the young new startup that has something that I never have crossed my mind. This is the really dangerous, disrupting thing that can take oDesk off his feet. Not the company that's just looking at your community to see what you will think to do it too. That's what they do.
So I think that this is a really good point. I think I probably look at competition too much. And the thing about a competitor is that if they're following you, the point that Odysseus is making, that's actually a good thing. And the reason why it's a good thing is, one, because it validates that you're probably doing the right stuff. And if you look at the numbers, are you growing faster? And what is it? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, isn't that what they say? Yeah. And so, one, because they're following so closely behind you and watching what you do, and they're putting their resources into doing that, then it means that they're actually not innovating. And so it's a clear statement that you're the market leader, you're the innovator, others are following, and if you're so worried about what the competition is doing or what your competition is doing and you're copying, well, then you're not innovating, right? And so if the competitors that are innovating are the ones that you need to know about, they're the ones that may come up with something new, something different. The other thing about the IP that I think dovetails into competition, it's one of that it's not really about the IP, it's about the execution. And I think everybody can probably think of dozens of examples like MySpace and Facebook, or, where the idea was somebody else's. It's like these Winklevoss brothers that keep suing Zuckerberg. It's not the idea, it's the execution. It's what he did with it. It's not that they had the idea. It's what did you actually do with that idea, right? And as he said, as Odysseus said, it's not the code, it's not the feature, it's the entire package. It goes well beyond just the IP. So I think the guidance or the sort of the tip here is to think about, is there a way that along the lines of transparency and along the lines of innovation and along the lines of overprotecting your IP, is there a way that you could open that up and actually get more out of it, enabling you to innovate and move faster?
Correct, and I don't want to give the mistaken impression that at least probably in the beginning, for the first year, I was personally kind of putting, how do you call those things that they put on the horse?
Blinders.
Yes, those. Without really looking at anything, just thinking about myself, right? Now, okay, we're a big company, there's lots of competition. I am actively, and everybody that is in year 2, 3, 4, they have to be looking at the competition, and you are looking at it in two completely different eyes. And I kind of groups the companies into these two categories. There are the companies that I'm looking exclusively, knowing that no innovation will come out of those. These are typically older companies, but they represent a very good way to assess a sincere, objective baseline of how is your execution. So there are your execution metric. And then there are a bunch of newbies. This company out of Israel, out of Sweden, out of Australia, and you can find that. I will give you names. So Fiverr, a fun little guy, a fun little company out of a smart guy in Israel, and actually gave a different kind of spin on the whole. What would I do for $5? Now, if you want to look at it, there is lots of interesting new innovations in this company. So in that new kind of in that other group, that's where, in a sense, you see something, and often what happens is that actually you see ideas, but actually the person himself hasn't actually seen. So you have this kind of ping pong of ideas, and that is a very, very valuable thing. We do have data that they don't. Well, so that actually is unique. Nobody has ever done that. So, anyway, that's about our competition.
So I think I'd like to cover one more point and then open it up for questions. And this last point is that we do we have time, Stas, for one more point? The last point is that we eat our own steak. So we built our company by leveraging our own network. So today we're 55 employees in Redwood City, beautiful downtown Redwood City. And we have 160 full-time equivalent contractors that come to work for us every day from around the world. So we have 0 developers in Redwood City. We have 0 QA resources in Redwood City. We have no support people in California. We have a support manager that lives in Tennessee and manages people in the Philippines. Our developers are remote and distributed, so they're not co-located. So we don't call it outsourcing. It's more like they're our team members. They just happen to live remotely all over the world, right? And so by putting ourselves in this position and by building our company, by leveraging this distributed and remote model, we don't have the challenges that other companies have of having to compete with the likes of Zynga and Facebook and Google and eBay for great talented engineers. We've freed ourselves from that problem by building our company in this remote and distributed and flexible way. So we have the ultimate in capacity. You can flex up and flex down as you need it. And for any role we look to hire, the first thing we say is this something that can and should be done in the network? So maybe expand or
yeah, this is this may end up being a black hole, because this is what really, I mean, a whole other talk about really virtual companies and how really you can have your company be truly geographically dispersed. I was telling to Stacy that the concept that whenever we're making an interview and about a person, and I kind of try to understand whether I like him or not, just based on a single answer. The perception that they have about how to hire someone remote. And if they have the perception that the brains are here and the very satellites, the peons or the rest of the people are there, that is the killer. Because in our company we feel that the brains are there. And we are actually the unnecessary for probably another 4 or 5 years headquarters. But in a true vessel company you wouldn't have that. And how to do that? It is feasible, and Gary was telling me yesterday in a presentation of a very smart person, and how she went on saying how hard it is to hire people, Silicon Valley people. Somehow there is this unnecessary obsession of Silicon Valleyers that they have to hire Silicon Valley people. As if in Boston or in New York or in England you can find an even better person. Because, and if you look about why, it goes all the way down into preconceptions and prejudice that somehow you have to spit on the other person's face in order to somehow iterate. The HD video Skyping isn't sufficient. And so this is, if there are questions, I will actually go back and deep dive here, and you will need to pull me out, because we can talk about that all the time.
Because we feel so strongly about that. So, our business was very much a kind of get the flywheel started business. We started in any marketplace business, and I have different entrepreneurs that come to me every day and say, hey, I'm starting a marketplace business. I had one that came to me today. It's called Zarly, and what they want to do is local services. So go get me a pizza and I'll pay you $5. Go do this and I'll pay you 10. Wait in line for me here. Move my car, this kind of thing. And, I was meeting this guy and I was saying, oh, you're screwed. Because you've got to pick a city or maybe a small geography. Maybe they should pick one vertical. It's going to be so hard to get that liquidity. You know what I mean by liquidity? Like you need both sides of the marketplace. You need the chicken and the egg. And we sit in front of you today. I've been at oDesk 5.5 years, and when I started, we had in the high hundreds of contractors, and today we have 1.3 million. We had a handful of customers. We were signing up, a handful of customers a day, and now we sign up thousands of customers a day. And I look back and say, oh, you just have to get the flywheel started, and maybe even a little bit, confident about that. With so many valuable lessons learned about how hard it is to start a business and to get it to the point of scale. And we could come back and talk a whole nother session on scaling a business. So once you get to critical mass, the market is validated. Now what do you do? And happy to answer questions about that. But what we wanted to do was give you an appreciation of just some of the things that we hope you haven't heard at other sessions like this. So we talked about not overprotecting your IP. We talked about the importance of transparency and visibility. We talked about not locking yourself into needing everybody co-located in one place, as you build and scale your businesses, because you will run into hiring challenges like Google is running into hiring challenges, because now they're having to compete with Zing and Facebook and pay people, six-figure bonuses to come work there, right? Which is why they're a significant customer of oDesk today, right? And so as we look at these things, we were hoping to give you some off-the-reservation tips and tricks that you don't normally hear. And with that, we'd be happy to open it up to questions and answer on the reservation questions or about anything we talked about or something we didn't cover if there's value for the group.
Thank you for great introduction. Let me start from few easy questions, and after a real question, we're going to...
The easy questions come from you, and then the hard questions from the audience?
No, I'm starting from easy, So
yes.
start to, we have a lot of the Russian people, Israeli people, they know how to ask questions, KGB style.
And by the way, for the record, I don't believe that Russians are hackers. I don't condone that. I don't believe it.
Good coders.
In Russian, by the way, there is no negative connotation in the word hacker. Okay. Certainly, you could probably spend many hours talking about the topic I'm going to ask you, but probably if you can just in short. Certainly, scaling is very interesting, but for majority of the companies, they just not getting to this point that they need to scale. They need to ramp up. And building marketplace, the biggest challenge for any marketplace, you need to bring people from two sides, chicken and eggs. You need to bring contractors, you need to bring people who are ready to order these contracts. And if you're solving the problem in any marketplace, usually you have one or two winners like eBay. There is a lot of second place, it's not counting. In your business, also second place not counting. So what was your path from kind of the zero late commerce to someone who solves this chicken and egg problem?
Let me give you a general answer, and you can go more specific. I was going to say chicken, and he was going to say egg, but we didn't have a chance to choreograph that. But in general, the beauty of eBay is that eBay doesn't have to recruit almost either side of the marketplace when they got started. Like if you're in a marketplace business where you have to recruit the chickens and the eggs, you want to reevaluate that business, right? So you want to say, gee, if I can get sellers, will I be able to get buyers? Or if I can get buyers, will I be able to get sellers? And for us, in the early days, we were out talking to customers, and people were asking us, can you bring me good talent? So there was already demand for the supply. So we had to go out and get talent. And what we realized is it was really easy to get talent. But it wasn't easy to tell if it was good, and we had to screen and we had to do things to make sure that the quality was good. In the early days, there was a tremendous amount of touch required in order to start that flywheel, right?
So it wasn't, in the early days, it wasn't automatic ranking. You did interview people who came in to work not for you, but for us.
For others. We had to interview everybody. We had hired contractors in our networks to be interviewers that would look at everybody and say, what college did you go to?
So you hire people to hire people.
It's exactly right.
And we are coming back to that after.
And so it was really important to do that. So we had good eggs. So when we got the chickens, we were able to go to the buyers, and we had excellent contractors because we had screened them. But what we realized is that we were putting artificial friction in our marketplace, and which would have been fine. It would have been a really nice business, but it wouldn't have been as scalable or as, what we realized early on is that the marketplace is a strategic asset. The largest online, on-demand, most qualified workforce is your asset. right? That's the thing that's really hard to copy. And as soon as we removed the barriers and said, no more interviewing, we don't care where you went to school, let the market decide, that's when things took off. But I think we needed touch in the early days to get the quality to a certain level, and then you could open the floodgates.
You mentioned transparency, so can you mention about what was size of
Can I
your...
give my answer to for
Oh,
the first
yeah,
question?
sorry, I forgot. Okay, now about X.
So a different perspective, I think a similar perspective, but with Greek accent words. Microphone, yes, sorry. So I think the meta answer to your question, how do you get to scale, is to understand the underlying mantis or formula, because in most cases the minutes of virality of YouTube, the days of virality of eBay isn't the case in the most ideas that will come that involve marketplaces. For us it was 6 months. It takes 6 months for one guy to actually come, change, think, leave his job, start becoming an oDesk remote home worker, and another in 3 months he will actually say to someone else. 9 months from beginning to end to get a nice word of mouth, while on YouTube you forwarded it in just a couple seconds. So you can imagine what is the viral loop of that. Now that's a worst case scenario. Your ideas of marketplaces will be somewhere in between, but they won't be here. Extremely few are having truly short, tight viral loops. And as a result, the primary thing that you have to understand is that you need to prepare in terms of having some form of patient capital of a low first 1-2 years of existence, where you exist at the low parts of the exponential curve. And during that time, you have to actually throw gasoline on the fire, bootstrap it. And in our case, we were paying Google. We still pay Google for that matter. But it was our way to actually feed the pipe for growing.
Well, one quick thing on that is the guys that started the German marketplace that eBay bought, I spoke to the guy that started that, and they sold it to eBay for $200 million. He said when he started the company, he was actually on the phone with jewelry stores in Germany, personally recruiting them onto the platform, right? So they started with jewelry and called every jewelry and coin shop in Germany to get them on the platform. So that hand.
Be willing to cheat in the first year and find a way to prolong, because the initial loops will take years as opposed to months that you would have liked. It's a bit, that's the answer.
So bottom line, no big secret, just take a phone, call your customer.
And have a good idea of a marketplace.
We have a lot of good ideas,
Yes.
many of them are just done. Okay, let's start from the question. Yeah.
I actually have two questions. So first question is regarding remote versus local work. So I heard Odysseus said there's a lot of prejudice and stuff. So remote is just as good as or whatever. If you meant, I don't buy that. There are advantages and disadvantages in both. And for a person who I don't know starts a project or venture or whatever, it's always a choice whether I do it local or I do it remote. So how do you deal with that? What do you tell these people, and how do you deal with this local versus a remote thing? That's one question. Second question is, how do you make buyers and providers stick together? Because you know, after some time, people can just continue working, and there's a marketplace. It's unlike the goodies marketplace. It has different sectors. So how do you make it stick?
I'll take your second question first, which is how do you stay in the middle of a relationship after a match? How do you keep them? How do you keep it sticky? And that's a hard problem for anybody. I think it's hard in a local market for any of these local goods, because once you meet a plumber or a home repair person or you know, somebody who's going to give you services locally, what incentive do you have to go back, right? You know the person, it's easy, you can say, hey, let's just avoid the marketplace and work directly. And what we've done from the beginning is we've said the marketplace is free. We don't really charge for the match. We don't charge you to post a job. We don't charge contractors to belong or bid on jobs. So people could come to oDesk, find each other, recruit that person and work off the platform. Now, it's a violation of our terms of service, but we don't make any money there. Like, we don't, people could connect on eBay and decide to transact off market too. So what we focused on was adding value after the match. Craigslist, yeah. And the value after the match for us is, how do you work with that person remotely? How do you know that an hour billed is actually an hour worked? And how do I know that as an hour worked, I'm actually going to get paid? And so what we do is we guarantee work to the employer by giving screenshots 6 times an hour at random intervals, and we guarantee payment to the contractor by saying you get paid for every hour you work, whether your employer likes the quality of work or not. It's very much like the real world in that regard. So what we've tried to do is replicate what would happen in the offline world. So if I came to your office every day and you agreed to pay me $10 an hour, that's what we agreed to, $10 an hour, and you said I need you for the next 6 months, and I worked 2 days and you realized you didn't like the work, you'd say don't come back tomorrow, but you'd owe me $160 for those 2 days. 8 hours, $10 an hour, times 2, 160, and you consider yourself fortunate. You cut your losses, you're on to the next guy. And that's what we do in the cloud. And so what we think we do is add value after the match in the form of guaranteed work, guaranteed payment, and then we help to pay legally globally. We figured out how to transfer money around the world to the contractors regardless of where they are. And if you just have 1 person or 2 people, maybe you can do that yourself. If you have 50, that's really hard, right, to pay 50 people individually. Odysseus, maybe you want to talk about the local versus remote, and how do you sort of compare and contrast, and what how do you get over that?
Yeah, I think that just the way that you use the words local and remote, and the facial characteristics that you use, actually already showed that you have the wrong perspective. And a way to actually explain to you how differently I think.
But by the way, I I paid maybe a couple hundred thousand via oDesk for remote work.
So forget for a second oDesk. When I'm talking about local and remote, I'm not talking about oDesk contractors. I'm talking about people that are working in the same office versus people that are working that are not collocated. This is, so we're talking about oDesk here. Now, create the continuum between 2 points. Point 1, the way that you define local work. Right next to it, imagine that the person that you hired, you tell him every morning when you will come, I don't want to see your face, go to that office, close the door, and when you will leave from the back door. He's working right next to you, inside a closet. Next data point. Imagine that this person doesn't even come to the office. He stays at the other part of the bay because he's a Berkeley guy. He comes, this kind of crossing the bays, so probably he comes every now and then, once a week or once every 2 weeks. Maybe for 1 week, he spent the whole week in some brainstorming session because someone there believes that brainstorming can only happen via what I said, spitting on each other's face. Now, this is East Bay to West Bay, or South Bay. Now, the next person is actually 3 time zones away. It is an East Coast, and you're here. Now, just to kind of go a bit faster, the next person is in England. Same culture, but different country. The next person is a Russian like you, if you are a Russian, but in a still, however, having a very healthy dose of time overlap, because a Russian developer wakes up at 11, 12 in the morning, and he starts working at 1 p.m., and he works through the night, which is 6 hours of overlap. Now, the next level is a Filipino individual, completely reversed, different culture, different time zone, okay? So, in that continuum, there is no reason for you to be thinking the latter, a different culture, no time overlap, a foreign non-trust person. You can actually just take the person in the closet and do that jump. So for us, for me, when we're talking about geographical dispersed, it doesn't have to be across the globe. I mean, today, we have taken it as a given. The best people that have worked in a startup before are here in somewhere in the US. Now, in 2 years, we will have finished in oDesk there will be at least 1,000 people that have spent the last 3 years working in Silicon Valley startups. There was none 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the only people that have worked in Silicon Valley startups were the people in Silicon Valley. So, but that is changing. And when you start now kind of bridging that gap, then automatically you bridge the salary gap. You bridge it, and it is much, much easier. But the problem right now for anybody that's trying to hire is that you are competing with three dinosaurs, these huge companies that have promised to their investors that they will hire 10,000 people each for the next 3 years, Facebook, Google, Apple, that are 10 miles away from each other. It is a massacre. So you have to actually be able to just go a bit further out from them. And as soon as you do that, you will find that every single step along the way is actually feasible.
But the point, I think the point is a good one. That are there differences? Absolutely. Are there challenges with each? Absolutely. It's I think it's weighing the pros and cons. What is your business? What are you trying to accomplish? There's certain roles where we absolutely need that person in Redwood City. But I'm saying you don't want to get so wrapped up where you think that everybody needs to be sitting there. So, by way of quick example, we're 3 to 1 contractors to employees. For every employee, we have 3 remote contractors. Let's just say that we're crazy. We're at the bleeding edge. We're so far, in the innovator or early adopter that, that's just crazy. So what if you flipped it upside down and you said for every 3 employees, you had 1 contractor? Is that feasible? Is it believable? Could you, let's say that's still too much. How about 10%? Your 20 employees, could 2 of those people be remote? Could 2 of those people be in another part of the world working for you remotely? And so if you just start thinking about, I'm not saying everybody should be and you should do what we should do. The point we're making is don't lock yourself in to having to believe that in order for my startup to be successful, everybody's got to be right here in the same office because that's where collaboration, that's where we're gonna sit here all night eating pizzas and brainstorming. Our point is that you will definitely hamstring yourself from growth because you'll spend 3 to 6 months just trying to hire the right resources and flip a coin because I think it's really hard to hire the right people. We hired 25 people last year. We exited 12. So of the 25 people we hired, we exited 12. 2 of those left on their own. One of them we didn't want to lose. The rest of them we asked to leave because we didn't hire the right people. So 50-50 on hiring, and think about all the time and energy it takes you to do that. You will slow your company down by locking into that mentality.
And I want to
50% attrition for employees. It's a huge number.
Yeah.
But it's also quite expensive for you because you're spending probably.
Stas, you need a mic.
Oh.
You are giving the wrong example, then I will not use a mic at all here.
It's probably quite expensive for you with 50% attrition because usually Silicon Valley startups have about 10% annual.
The math is not the people that we hire. It wasn't from the people that we hire, from our total number, 10%. So our typical.
Okay. So
it is, we are kind of more normal.
Okay.
But just to put this, there we are. Gary is the normal, wise CEO when he says that there are people that should be local and people that can be remote. I am the militant radical. I don't believe that there is any such. So, and I don't invite you to start an argument with me on that, but just so as you understand.
But by the way, sorry, this mic doesn't. Okay. By the way, question which we didn't discuss. Why you in Silicon Valley? And I assume that it was one of the requests from your investors. Is it right?
I'm in Silicon Valley because I love it here. I love the weather. I love the climate. This is the place I want to live. I get energized by what happens around us, and by events like this. I don't think this is happening everywhere. So I am the. I love living here. Odysseus is here. He'll give his own answer. I'll tell you what I think his answer is. It's because I want him here, and I think it's important that he's here because
Why do you want him here? Why can't he be somewhere else far away? in Greece.
Why don't you ship him back to Greece?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
So just to put this into perspective, because the answer is, his true answer is, the person that is running engineering, the VP of engineer in oDesk, with 80 people under him, 10 of them right into the Redwood City, is working from Greece. Me, I am here because by now, the violin of the immigrant, or my kids are here, my kids don't want to leave, I am stuck here. I am in this phase where I actually dream about Greece and I won't be able to go back to Greece.
So the same problem. Okay, excuse me, lady on the back.
I have a practical question. So it's easier to control someone who's working on a computer by doing screenshots 6 times an hour and so on. What if I need my contractors to physically be present, at some place and refill the advertising materials? How do I control them?
So the question is, you understand the way the oDesk system works, where it's a good facilitator, it verifies trust in a remote relationship where the work is happening in front of the computer. How would you validate the work, or what would you do when those people aren't in front of the computer? So what if they have to go on location or on the phone, or it's not knowledge-based work that happens in front of the computer? Is that the question?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can answer this question. I can answer this question. Picture 5 years forward, where the last local person has just moved, the last local job has become remote, where a Pakistani taxi driver is actually in Pakistan, remotely driving a taxi cab in New York. Okay? So now, the point that I'm trying to make is
some of the times I feel like they are remote. When
never leaving his home, using the joysticks. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is that what we started is actually only meaningful in terms of the aspects of guarantee and verification for a white-collar worker that spends their time on the computer. Hopefully, as the industry now becomes bigger, different solutions and different ways will come to enable the person to get to do both create the tools for today. A remote sensor doesn't get paid by the hour, but you do have already remote doctors. My sister is a radiologist in Greece. She's already hooked up in the global network where she does radiology diagnosis from pictures that are downloaded on the internet. So that's a remote doctor.
I saw there's a warehouse somewhere where the guy driving the forklift is remote. So he's sitting at joysticks in another part of the world, controlling the forklift, picking up packages and dropping them into the bin remotely. So it's.
I know other guy who is joystick dropping pump on other place.
They're getting paid by the hour.
By the way, about this monitoring system you have. Actually, I saw oDesk probably first time 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago, and we actually was outsourcing a lot of the project in Russia, Ukraine, other places. And one of the best employees we have said that he never ever will work under supervision of the big brother of the oDesk because there is monitoring solution. And frankly, I understand his feeling. And I know more people kind of see it as a negative. Whenever I use oDesk, I never actually ask people to use this monitoring because, again, best people never will use it, and those who will use probably not the best. So, question.
That's what you believe. Huh? So that's what you believe. You believe that people that would...
My experience, very, very small one. So in your practice, you talk about transparency. So what percentage of people agree to run this screenshot monitor, and how many?
So, the way our system works is that if you want guaranteed payment, meaning we're going to pay you for every hour you work, whether we collect it from the employer or not. Right?
So you agree to pay even if employer refuses to pay?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guarantee payment to the contractor whether we collect it from the employer or not.
What is your time card?
How do you ensure that?
Yeah, how do we do it?
We guarantee it. I'll pay you for every hour you log in our system, whether you work or not.
For this service, contractor required to run.
Right.
Has to run the sub. He's got to prove that he actually works. So the only way we can guarantee work, I can't guarantee the quality of it. I can't guarantee that they were fast, but I can guarantee that they worked an hour. And to the contractor, what I would say is, listen, you decide whether or not you want to get guaranteed payment for a job from somebody around the world. And if you don't want to work through my system, go direct. But don't come back to me if the guy, you work for a month for free and then you don't get paid, right?
What percentage of people saying no way?
Well, we have 1.3 million users, 2,000 a day are signing up, and I imagine the people that are saying no way are the people that come to the front door and say that's not for me.
No, actually many people are using oDesk without guaranteed payment.
Without guaranteed payment, right.
I have a question. I think we kind of did not expand the. You keep saying that you guarantee the hours work. For example, I'll give you an example, but I'm not sure how you ensure that those hours, even with the monitoring system, hours are work. For example, you're taking snapshots or like every 10 minutes roughly, right?
6 times an hour at random intervals.
Randomly, but on average every 10 minutes. Now I'm a software engineer, and I know that sometimes I have to sit down, grab my notepad and think. And this thinking sometimes takes sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes half of a day. And right now I'm working on a problem that took me like 2 days to figure out. There's this solution, right? But it took me 2 days to figure out. How do you measure that? You say, hey dude, you didn't work.
I think
because there's nothing actually on the screen, because I have to use my brain instead of keeping typing, right? Is it limited only to the system where you provide a clear definition of the task and then someone just sits down and codes it real fast, real good quality?
If you don't, let me not talk to you about, start by talking about the big brother aspect of that scares.
My question was simple. How do you ensure that this was the work? What was on the screen is the work. Who's watching? Who's watching those screenshots?
Okay, I can give you the very simple answer, or allow me, if you want, to make kind of a bigger jump.
Sure.
What we believe, and that is part of the secret sauce, if you wish, of oDesk, was the fact that normal people like to work in a salad way. The majority of the people hate interviewing, hate negotiating money, hate having to justify that they worked. They like to go, sit at work, do their work, leave, and not think about money. So that is what we believe, that the majority of the world likes to work. That is the typical employee relationship. Now, our problem is, how can I provide an employee-like relationship where money is out of my mind in an underlying contractor cross-border relationship? So that is where we started. And really the whole problem of oDesk goes really into that. Try to provide for the contractor an employee-like relationship, even though there aren't compliance to protect him. So we will create a compliance as if there was a global union that says, if you work, you will get paid. And we come up with some rather problematic, full of little errors way. It works 90, 95, 98% of the time, and the rest, most of it we end up paying out of our pocket. Some of it ends up screwing some people, unfortunately. But we believe that it is something that enables an employee-like relationships, real normal work, to happen in a way that in an environment that otherwise you wouldn't be able to do. So, and back to the privacy issue that you were talking. When we are, the way that I was always describing to someone is, with the moment that you come to work, you are sacrificing some part of your privacy to work in your cubicle. Your manager may come behind you. You can see everybody can see from far away. Have you noticed how cubicles are? The hole in the table are in the opposite part of the door. So as your computer is facing the other side. In India, people are putting little mirrors so as they can see who is watching them. Right? Now, that is the privacy that is completely accepted from today's world. So what we are trying to do to some extent is, okay, we have to give in to something for the employer, even though we really are starting from the contractor to create his employee relationship, we have to give in and at least give him the same privacy rules that are existing in the cubicle remote. And it felt very, very big brotherish to people in the US. It was not felt big brotherish for people that were able to gain the freedom of working from their homes. And
for jobs they wouldn't have access to, but tactically, and I agree with everything Odysseus said. It's not 100%. It's it's some percentage. To answer the sort of the big brother concern, what we do is we give the power to the contractor. The contractor can delete any screenshot that they don't want their buyer to see. They can log out of the system, right? It's only when they're logged in. But let's say your screen got captured and you said, you know what, I don't want to share that. That was something personal that I don't want my employer to see. You can delete it. You have it's a diary where you can rip out the page. We just automate the capture of it. And then what we also did was we put in keyboard strokes and mouse events. We put in a work memo so you can tell your employer what you're working on if you want to. So we came up with ways so the system couldn't be gamed to try and provide trust on both sides. Trust that I'm going to get paid and trust that an hour billed was an hour worked. And it's not perfect. And to your question, as well, you can add offline time. You can say, look, I worked 20 hours on this problem. Now your employer may question it because there's no proof. But really, in most instances, it's about the output. It's does this guy deliver great work? And do I feel like he's working reasonably fast? Or do I feel good about what I'm ultimately paying for the work, right? Which is just like the real world. Does this person do good work? And do I feel reasonably good about the salary that I'm paying to do that work? Or should I go get somebody else? Does that make sense? Yeah. So we've got a system that isn't 100% foolproof, but it facilitates.
Great point, thank you. We have time for two questions.
The lady in the back.
To ask,
No. Okay,
I just wanted to ask about different view. We're talking about the view from the employer part. But I have a company in Russia, a small outsourcing company, and the programmers that are working the same for companies here and around the world, but they're coming every day to the office. And we found that this is very important for the employee to be part of something and not just sitting in home. He wants to work for companies overseas, but part of at least half of our programmers was working before as employees for other companies with more money. But they prefer to come to feel part of a group, to get mentoring. Are you having any plans about,
may I answer this? We have in oDesk 1 day a week. This is our work from home day. Okay. In the beginning, I was staying home, kind of enjoying the single day that I get to live the dream that my co-founder lives every day. But it is boring. It is exactly what you said. It is lonely. It is too productive. So I was really missing the environment. Now, what do I do today? I actually go to a coffee shop because I prefer that. I get all the excitement of the traffic, etc. I typically actually ask friends. I go to a coffee shop, I go to Cafe del Doji for 2-3 hours, and we work there. And then Borone for a low productivity kind of another 2 hours. So getting the aspect of social with the people of your choice as opposed to a colleague that picks his nose permanently is actually better.
He's not talking about me.
So now, and the other aspect of that is that to some extent there is a generational conversion. My kids go out, have kind of grown-up kids. I'm not young. 16 years old. They stay out until 10 o'clock. Do you know what means stay out? They're on Facebook and no text. So the new world is online connecting and online happy in a way that me and you are actually one generation behind. And I don't believe that the problem of interacting and being happy by actually rubbing shoulders will be necessary in the next generation. Things have changed, and now we can say, oh, but it's not very natural, etc. Okay, you can go to the coffee shop, call your friend, call your girlfriend, and that is even better.
It may end up remotely making kids.
that would be an interesting startup.
Please don't give them any ideas.
Last question, Lina, please.
Hi, Lucy. Could you tell us about the co-founder and early team, how you found them, how did you convince them that's a great idea?
So,
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is
so
about
can you
early.
tell us about the co-founder and the early team and early ideas? I will give you random points. So my co-founder is a person that I have been programming together from college. So we are co-coders, if you wish, and we end up becoming almost relatives. So he has married. He's best man. He's my best man. So a typical friendship.
That's not almost relatives in the U.S., by the way. I don't know about Greece, but-
Okay. Now the team, the early team and the current team, from some kind of random, you can say, occurrences, ends up being completely Russian. Not Greek, Russian and Ukrainian and ex-USSR. So that has to do with the fact that the world of, I think, strong, good programmers is highly connected in Russia, and really by having some initial 3, 4, 5 people, the network start growing, and actually in the first few years of this, not only our own engineering team was only Eastern Europeans, but our whole network was only people from the ex-USSR. And it was really until 2-3 years later that the first person from India came along, and it was a revolution, because suddenly you have people that actually have entrepreneurial interest and interest to make money, as opposed to just write code and kind of get respect. And the other thing is that the people from the second tiers, mostly, not Moscow and St. Petersburg, but the cities that I wouldn't even know that they exist. These people didn't care about money. They care about actually writing good code, working with people at strong peers, etc. Complete different perspective as soon as India came along. India brought entrepreneurship and a completely different virality, because there was, you can see the opposite side, there was greed, but there was really thinking about how I can take that and convert into something that I can actually make more and more money. And just kind of to see the story, and then about 2 years later, the other revolution happened, when a country completely out of the blue came and flooded the oDesk network. The country was Philippines. Philippines, if you had seen, if you were to look at Alexa, Philippines had Facebook as #1 ahead of Google from a year ago. So an extremely social country with tremendously broken infrastructure that people have to travel for 2 hours to go to the place to work, and people of English speaking, highly educated, and really not a system to work. So contrary to Indians, Filipinos were much more comfortable being an independent contractor. For a person in India, the culture is different than in Russia, where working for yourself is good. Working for yourself in India is common to unemployed. So India didn't ever create strong teams, but few strong contractors.
Just a couple of comments about local, hiring your team locally, or early team members. How do you convince them, and what's the right team member? I think there's a really important point, and maybe you weren't getting to this in your question, and I'm reading into it, but it's it's hiring the right people at the right time. And you've got an idea. You're an early team member. You're going to give up some percentage of your company to invite in a co-founder, or you're going to give up equity to early team members. What do you look for? Do you have the right people? Are you bringing in the right resources at the right time? And I think that's a whole conversation. Happy to talk to you afterwards about it. But I think it's really important. The one piece of guidance I'll give you is to make sure that you are bringing in the right people at the right time, and you want to bring in. I have this saying: jungle, dirt road, highway. And if you think about the evolution of our company, in the early days we were in the jungle. And what do you need in the jungle? Well, you need people that are really good with machetes. You need people that have one in each hand and they don't mind that there's vines everywhere and everybody's got to chip in to blaze that trail. But once that trail is blazed and you get on the dirt road, well then what do you need? Well then you need a Jeep, and you don't need machetes anymore. As a matter of fact, they may get in the way when you're trying to drive, so you need to get rid of them. And some people left at that point in our evolution because they were more comfortable in the jungle. They couldn't make the transition to the Jeep and they didn't like it. They said, what are we doing out here? I want to go back into the jungle and hack vines and be doing that. And you know, now our company, we can see the highway. We're in a position now where, you know, what do you need to have a big business? Well, you need a massive market. You need the money to execute. You need the right team members to execute. You need enough infrastructure to support the weight of this of the organization that's going to be on top of you, whether it's a publicly traded company or it's an acquisition. But you know, to support millions and millions of dollars in revenue, you need, well, now all of a sudden you need a CFO, and you've got to worry about you know, a lot of things in compliance that you didn't have to worry about when you were in the jungle. So you need a highway. You no longer need the Jeep. Now you want the Lexus or the Escalade or the Mercedes or whatever it is. And some people aren't comfortable operating at 80 miles an hour. They'd rather be in the Jeep with the top off and their hair blowing. And so my point is that it's really, really important to get the right people at the right time and make sure that you're interviewing for the right personal characteristics, primarily, and the right motivation, secondarily. The skills and the knowledge follow those two. But the motivation, make sure that somebody's comfortable in the jungle, they want to be in the jungle, they know they're going to be working long hours, they want a machete in each hand, not driving around in the Jeep, right? So really important to know.
And it implies the part that may be uncomfortable, but the way that you will achieve that is you have to be willing to shed your skin. Given different people, this means that actually the company has to be transforming and shedding people that were the best people, the people that made a difference, and you have to be comfortable or to be to think that it is okay to actually let these people go. Now that is actually common in startups that are growing.
I just spoke to a recruiter yesterday, and his name is Paul Diversa. He's a phenomenal recruiter. Pretty much none of us in this room can afford him. But he just placed a new COO at Groupon. So they just hired a woman out of Google. They just announced it yesterday. And I said, wait a second, didn't Groupon just hire a COO a year ago? And he said, yeah, a guy by the name of Rob, he's out. I said, gee, that was a short stint. He said, yeah, he was there a year, and the day he got there, the job was too big for him. So the company was growing so fast, that the guy they hired lasted about 2 weeks in his comfort zone, and the company was already past him. And so what I'll give this 29-year-old founder and CEO, Andrew Mason, incredible credit for is that he recognized that. He recognized that, hey, I just hired this guy, gave him a chunk of the company, convinced him to join us, 11 months ago, but now I've got to replace him. Why? Because he can't scale. We need somebody that can operate at a faster speed on the highway. So it's a good example of that.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, we have no time for official part, so let's thank our speakers. They want to say thank you. I hope you have interesting insights and useful experience. And now we have our traditional 1 hour for open networking, so keep these guys close the door, don't let them go outside.
For that hacker comment?
But insulting hacker comment.
Yes, thank you very much, thank you.
Thank you.
And please nominate companies for our demo days at the end of the May.